This morning, royal rarity, the Queen to address the Commonwealth on the coronavirus pandemic in just a few moments' time. Plagued ship, the virus-riddled Ruby Princess prepares to dock. And under scrutiny, the pressure is on the government to get its crucial JobKeeper package right.
Live from our Sydney headquarters, this is 7 News with Angela Cox.
Good morning. We begin with breaking news from the UK, where the Queen is about to give a historic address from Windsor Castle.
I'm speaking to you at what I know is an increasingly challenging time. A time of disruption in the life of our country. A disruption that has brought grief to some, financial difficulties to many, and enormous changes to the daily lives of us all. I want to thank everyone on the NHS frontline, as well as care workers and those carrying out essential roles, who selflessly continue their day-to-day duties outside the home in support of us all. I'm sure the nation will join me in assuring you that what you do is appreciated, and every hour of your hard work brings us closer to a return to more normal times. I also want to thank those of you who are staying at home, thereby helping to protect the vulnerable and sparing many families the pain already felt by those who have lost loved ones. Together we are tackling this disease, and I want to reassure you that if we remain united and resolute, then we will overcome it. I hope in the years to come, everyone will be able to take pride in how they responded to this challenge. And those who come after us will say the Britons of this generation were as strong as any, that the attributes of self-discipline, of quiet, good-humoured resolve, and of fellow feeling still characterize this country. The pride in who we are is not a part of our past. It defines our present and our future. The moments when the United Kingdom has come together to applaud its care and essential workers will be remembered as an expression of our national spirit, and its symbol will be the rainbows drawn by children. Across the Commonwealth and around the world, we have seen heartwarming stories of people coming together to help others, be it through delivering food parcels and medicines, checking on neighbours, or converting businesses to help the relief effort. And though self-isolating may at times be hard, many people of all faiths and of none are discovering that it presents an opportunity to slow down, pause and reflect in prayer or meditation. It reminds me of the very first broadcast I made in 1940, helped by my sister. We as children spoke from here at Windsor to children who had been evacuated from their homes and sent away for their own safety. Today, once again, many will feel a painful sense of separation from their loved ones. But now as then, we know deep down that it is the right thing to do. While we have faced challenges before, this one is different. This time we join with all nations across the globe in a common endeavour, using the great advances of science and our instinctive compassion to heal. We will succeed, and that success will belong to every one of us. We should take comfort that while we may have more still to endure, better days will return. We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again. But for now, I send my thanks and warmest good wishes to you all.
For more, let's go to our Europe Bureau Chief Hugh Whitfield in London for us. Hugh, an exceptionally rare speech there from Her Majesty.
Yeah, Ange, and I think it speaks more than anything to the exceptional times that we are in, considering that the majority of Commonwealth citizens around the world are in some form of lockdown. It was a deeply personal message from Her Majesty. I think she was trying to offer some hope to those people who are in a dark time right now. And among the key themes, calling for unity, saying that if we remain united and resolute, then we will overcome it. She acknowledged that this is a difficult time for many who have lost loved ones, who are struggling financially, with the changes as well to everyday life. She applauded the health workers, particularly those here in the UK, and said that those who come after us will say the Britons of this generation were as strong as any. Better days will return. And that really is something. The context of this, of course, is that the Queen has reigned for 68 years. She's one of the few people left who remembers serving to some extent during the Second World War. And she mentioned there an address that she gave as Princess Elizabeth alongside her sister Margaret back in 1940 to the children who were evacuated out of London during the Second World War, and the distance that placed between families. And there are hallmarks, of course, to what we're experiencing all right now.
And Hugh, the Queen delivered the address from Windsor Castle, where she's in isolation.
Yeah, she's been at Windsor Castle for a couple of weeks now, joined by Prince Philip, who was moved from Sandringham a couple of weeks ago. The royal family's essentially scattered around country houses now throughout the UK. That message was recorded a couple of days ago. We're told that it happened in a room big enough at Windsor Castle so that the Queen could be sufficiently distant from the only cameraman who was allowed in to set up. He was in full protective equipment when he was in the room with Her Majesty, and that, of course, is to protect the Queen. She's just a few weeks away from turning 94 years old. Of course, that means is in a very high risk group when it comes to coronavirus. So a number of historic moments that we've just witnessed, and quite a rare speech by Queen Elizabeth II.
Incredible times. OK, thanks so much, Hugh Whitfield. The virus-plagued Ruby Princess cruise ship will dock south of Sydney this morning after a criminal investigation was launched into its ill-fated voyage. The police probe will look into possible breaches of biosecurity laws after passengers were allowed off the vessel. 11 passengers have now died from COVID-19, the latest a 78-year-old Queensland man. It follows a 7 News special investigation into the debacle, which raised more questions about what went wrong.
I think it was 6:30, maybe 7 o'clock. They made an announcement saying New South Wales Health have given permission for this cruise to board and depart. So, for all our minds, that meant it was safe to board.
More than 660 passengers tested positive to the virus. Western Australia has been cut off from the rest of the country after a so-called hard border closure came into effect overnight. No one is allowed in, and even locals are unable to return home unless they meet strict criteria. Some fly-in, fly-out workers considered critically important will be exempt from the new rule. The federal government will take its JobKeeper plan to Parliament this week, urging Labor and the unions to support the crucial funding package. Political reporter Taylor Aiken is in Canberra. Taylor, the government's hinted it could broaden the $130 billion scheme.
Good morning, Ange. That's right. The government says it is committed to providing support for as many Australians as possible through these tough economic times. But union bosses had raised concerns that up to 1.1 million employees could slip through the cracks of the government's landmark JobKeeper scheme, with casual employees required to have worked at one business for 12 months or longer in order to be eligible. But Attorney General Christian Porter says the government is working closely with unions in a cooperative way.
We are pushing a $130 billion lifeboat out into the roughest economic seas Australia has ever seen. We are listening. So when you will see the final draft, you'll see that we're trying to be as inclusive and reasonable as possible.
The The government had been working to get the draft legislation finished by today, with Parliament set to resume on Wednesday to pass the emergency package. Labor has so far indicated they would support the scheme on the floor of Parliament, with the government saying up to 6 million Australian jobs depend on it. Ange?
OK, Taylor, thank you. Australians are backing Scott Morrison's handling of the COVID-19 crisis, with his support surging in a new poll out today. The Australians News poll has the Prime Minister leading Anthony Albanese as preferred leader, 53 to 29. The pandemic has also seen the coalition return to a dominant position in the two-party preferred vote. Scott Morrison's support took a hit during the bushfire crisis, but today's poll has him recording the highest approval ratings for a national leader in more than a decade. He led New South Wales through a catastrophic bushfire season. Now the state's Rural Fire Service Commissioner, Shane Fitzsimmons, will be stepping down from the top job. The 50-year-old will retire from the fire service this month after more than 30 years and move on to head up a new disaster and recovery agency to be known as Resilience New South Wales. Fitzsimmons has been working behind the scenes on the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Checking Monday's weather now. Mostly sunny in Brisbane and 29. Partly cloudy in Sydney and Canberra. A cloudy day in Melbourne and Hobart. A shower or two in Adelaide and 21 degrees. Mostly sunny in Perth and a shower or two and a possible storm in Darwin. Coming up in Seven's early news, the new supermarket rules coming into effect today, limiting the number of customers allowed inside. What you need to know. And America braces for a horror week. The dire warnings as the coronavirus pandemic nears its peak. From today, supermarket giants Woolworths and Coles will limit the number of customers in store in an effort to slow the spread of coronavirus ahead of the Easter rush. Shoppers will need to wait in cordoned-off queues outside the stores until people inside leave. Police and security guards will manage the queues at peak times and enforce the 1.5 metre social distancing rules. Customers are being urged to pre-plan their Easter shopping. America is bracing for the peak of its coronavirus crisis this week as the country's top medical official issued some of the starkest warnings yet. The number of people infected in the US is now more than 320,000, with more than 9,000 deaths. In New York, the epicentre of the pandemic, more than 4,000 people have died. The US Surgeon General says the situation is set to get worse, saying this will be the country's Pearl Harbor moment. But in a positive sign, New York has recorded its first decline in daily virus deaths. The UK government has warned all public exercise could be banned if people keep flouting social distancing rules. Images of crowded parks and people sunbaking on beaches sparked public outrage over the weekend. Another 621 people have died from COVID-19 in the UK, taking the death toll to more than 4,900. There's some good news from mainland Europe. Italy has recorded its lowest daily death rate in 2 weeks, and Spain has registered its smallest rate of increase in infections since the crisis began. Pope Francis has celebrated Palm Sunday Mass in an almost empty St Peter's Basilica. Normally, tens of thousands of people would have attended an outdoor Mass in St Peter's Square. Instead, the pontiff presided over an indoor service attended by just a few priests and nuns and a small choir. During his sermon, Pope Francis told young people not to be afraid to put their lives on the line for others during the coronavirus pandemic. A young Australian family stranded in the Philippines under a strict COVID lockdown hold grave fears for their safety. After following the government's travel advice, they're now pleading for help to get home as the president threatens to use deadly force on the streets.
Cebu in the southern Philippines, it's an island paradise. But the Digance family's dream holiday here has become a living nightmare.
We're very scared and we're very stressed and we're worried about the family at home, worrying about us.
Sophia and Nathan arrived in early March with their children Siri and George. 5 days later, Manila was thrown into a month-long COVID-19 lockdown. The president urging police and the military to do whatever it takes to keep people off the streets.
Shoot them dead Yeah, that's the big fear at the moment, being stuck out on the street.
After cancelling a family reunion, they booked the first flight home, even before Scott Morrison urged Aussies abroad to return. But the flight was cancelled, and a string of others in weeks since have suffered the same fate.
We've been actively trying to get home since the 15th of March, every single day. On the phone, hours and hours at a time.
We've booked that many flights home. We spent tens of thousands on flights to get home.
An intensive care nurse at Flinders, Sophia, knows the coronavirus risks. Her family's now in isolation of sorts, the only guests left at their resort, which says they'll have to move out within a week.
We have no end point to this.
Back home in Adelaide, Sophia's parents feel helpless and scared.
We really fear for the children and their safety and their health if they can't stay where they are. So it's really desperate now.
The federal government's attempting to get all stranded Aussies home, but Sophia and Nathan are now terrified that they're just two small voices falling through the cracks.
And we're desperate now. We've become really, really desperate for help. We need help.
We need to bring them all home. They all need help, not just our families.
Mike Smithson, 7 News.
There's good news for those who defer loan repayments on their mortgage and credit cards during the coronavirus crisis. From today, Australians given a 6-month deferral won't have their credit rating affected. In an effort to relieve stress, banks will now report customers as not having missed a repayment. That's provided they are up to date before the outbreak. Education ministers across the country will meet tomorrow to discuss the future of schooling for Year 12 students. Concerns have been raised that the coronavirus outbreak will have an effect on final scores and tertiary education opportunities. Boosting overall scores and changes to university application procedures have been flagged as options for a solution. Victoria is also considering having Year 12 students sit their final exams early next year. Checking finance now, the Dow Jones closed 361 points down. The Nasdaq also fell. In London, the FT 100 lost and Germany's DAX also finished lower. On the commodities market, gold is trading at $1,620 an ounce. Oil is $28 a barrel. The Aussie dollar is buying just under 60 US cents, 65 Japanese yen and $1.02 New Zealand. Next on 7's Early News, an AFL superstar breaks his silence on the huge players' pay cut. And horse racing finds a new cult favourite, but not for her exploits on the track. Our top stories this Monday. The Queen's speech. Her Majesty delivers a rare address to the Commonwealth acknowledging the hardship and loss caused by the coronavirus. A criminal investigation underway into the virus-plagued Ruby Princess as it prepares to dock south of Sydney. And the government gets ready to take its $130 billion wage subsidy package to Parliament. Brownlow medalist Patrick Dangerfield has revealed the heavy toll recent pay negotiations took on him as the Players Association president. The Geelong star played a key role in crisis talks with the AFL amid criticism from greats such as Lee Matthews.
I understand the frustration at the time. It takes years to organise and orchestrate a CBA, and all of a sudden we changed one in 4 or 5 days. So some that called for it earlier, but they didn't and clearly didn't understand the detail.
AFL players have taken a 50% pay cut until at least the end of May. Embattled NRL Chief Executive Todd Greenberg says he has no intention of quitting. Greenberg's been under increased pressure ever since the COVID-19 pandemic forced the season to be suspended, which exposed the dire state of the game's finances. But despite a fierce backlash from players and clubs, Greenberg maintains he's committed to navigating the NRL through this crisis and slashing costs across the board. He expects to sack more than 40 NRL staff, but says all 16 clubs can survive. Have you ever seen a horse eat pizza before? If not, you're in for a real treat. Trainer Wendy Roach rewarded star mare Natoya with her favourites, champagne and pizza, after winning Saturday's $1.5 million Doncaster Mile at Randwick as a $41 outsider.
Well, I thought I had a bad diet, but she takes the cake. She does like pizza because she dead set inhaled it.
The mare gave jockey James Innes Jr. his first Group 1 win. Premier League owners are at war with their players over pay cuts. A proposal to slash wages by 30% has been flatly rejected. The Players' Union says cutting more than $1 billion in wages would cost the UK government more than $400 million in tax. They fear that loss of earnings would hurt the government-funded National Health Service. Champions League and Europa League organisers say the competitions could be abandoned if coronavirus restrictions remain into September. Next on 7 Early News, a closer look at how the weather's shaping up in your part of the country. Taking a look at the weather around the country, a broad high will allow winds to ease and showers to become more isolated over South Australia, Tasmania and Victoria. The high will direct moist onshore winds and showers over eastern New South Wales. A broad area of low pressure stretching from western WA through to northern Queensland will cause showers and storms. Around the capitals, mostly sunny in Brisbane and 21, partly cloudy in Sydney and Canberra, a cloudy day in Melbourne and Hobart, a shower or two in Adelaide and 21 degrees, mostly sunny in Perth, and a shower or two and a possible storm in Darwin. And that is 7 Early News for this Monday, the 6th of April. I'm Angela Cox. Now it's time for Sunrise with Koshi and Nat.
Breaking news, the Queen's speech, a rare address on the COVID crisis.
We will succeed, and that success will belong